Hey y'all, we're having a mini episode 11.5. What is a scene?
Yeah, which we had talked about possibly doing one in the future, so I'm glad we're doing one now.
Yeah, I think this is a good one to follow our last one about editing because scenes are very important.
Yeah.
I don't even know how. Well, I'll start with what is a scene? Is that.
Oh, yeah, do that. I can't
Okay.
believe I didn't even, so.
I actually came up with 3 different definitions. So.
3. I'm sorry. 3?
From, according to Fictionary, which is a website,
Yeah.
Fictionary, and it's found on the Writing Cooperative website.
I've used that one so much
Yes,
to make
me
these,
too.
to make notes for this podcast.
Fictionary is amazing.
Yeah.
A scene is a section of your novel where a character or characters engage in action or dialogue. You can think of a scene as a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Nice.
Usually, you'll start a new scene when you change the point of view of the character, the setting, or the time.
Mm-hmm.
You may start a new scene if the scene you're working on is too long to fit the structure of your manuscript.
Huh.
So that was one.
Okay.
The next one is from Teach Yourself How to Write a Blockbuster by Lee Weatherly and Helen Corner.
Yeah.
It says a scene is a sequence where a character or characters engage in some sort of action and or dialogue. Scenes should have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mini story arc.
Yeah.
And should focus around a definite point of tension that moves the story forward.
Okay.
And then the last one is from The Art of Fiction, Notes on Craft for Young Writers by John Gardner. And he says, by scene, we mean all that is included in an unbroken flow of action from one incident in time to another. The action within a scene is unbroken in the sense that it does not include a major time lapse or a leap from one setting to another, though the characters may, of course, walk or ride from one place to another without breaking the scene, or the camera, so to speak,
Right.
dollying after them. And I'm sorry, my throat.
You having some issues?
I am. Sorry about that. So basically, each scene is a little mini story within your book.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've come up with types of scenes, and I don't know how this fits in with what you've got, but there are beginning scenes, middle scenes, and ending scenes, which all have their own beginnings, middles, and ends.
Yeah.
And then if you think about the type, I'm sorry,
You're struggling.
I am. You have an action and a reaction, goal, conflict, disaster, reaction, dilemma, or decision.
Yeah.
Okay. So the beginning scenes setup, that's the setup, the character introduction. The middle scenes are ramping up the conflict, the complications, throwing rocks like we always have talked about.
Right.
And then the ending scenes are those scenes that build up to the climax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing that I have read in this research that you have to do regarding a scene is to figure out what the point or purpose of that scene is.
Okay.
So some of the ideas for points and purposes of scenes are to build suspense, character development, create an emotional connection between characters, dramatize events, move the action or plot forward, introduce or intensify conflict, introduce or reveal a character, introduce themes, establish mood, or provide some kind of resolution.
Yeah.
Does the scene make sense in the overall plot? Is
Yeah.
it necessary for the overall plot? I think you talked about that last week.
Yeah.
And then I've come to the elements of a scene. So I don't know, how did you go about researching this?
So since I was thinking about this in terms of a mini episode, so I kept it pretty simple and have a list of questions / a step-by-step kind of, I want to say protocol. I'm a scientist in my real money earning job, so a step-by-step protocol of writing a scene.
I like that word. So let's hear the protocol.
Yeah, so number 1, ask yourself what needs to happen in this scene.
Okay.
That's the general basis. What needs to happen? And step 2, ask yourself what's the worst that would happen if the scene was omitted. So is it necessary?
Okay.
If you took out the entire scene, would that affect later events in the book? If
Okay.
it doesn't, then you can cut that scene.
Okay.
Step 3, decide who needs to be in this scene. So you know what needs to happen in this scene. You know it's necessary based on step 2. So who needs to be in it to get what needs to happen to happen?
Done. Okay.
Right. Step 4, where does the scene need to take place? So now you can put your characters in a place. You know what they need to do. You know what you're trying to accomplish with this scene. Step 5, what's the most surprising thing that could happen in this scene, and use it. So something is not surprising to you, then it's not going to be surprising to your reader, probably.
Okay.
So, ask yourself, what can turn this scene on its head?
Okay.
And use it. And if it doesn't end up working out that way, then that's fine. You can rewrite this scene. That's the
Okay.
whole point of this protocol.
All right.
Step 6, is it a long scene or a short scene? And decide that before you write it. So you know what needs to happen. Is it going to be long, a long drawn out scene where you need to explain things and get information across, or is it a shorter scene where, like a fight scene is typically short, because you're not trying to get a bunch of information across. You're trying to, choreograph a battle or
Right.
what have you. Step 7, brainstorm at least 3 different ways that you could begin your scene. And I think the reason for that is you don't want to get stuck with just the first thing that comes to mind. There are so many ways that you can start out a scene. Play around with it.
I mean, that's kind of like how to start your story.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that you do. How many different ways can you start? Where do you start?
Right.
So the same thing with the scene.
Yeah.
With each scene.
All
Okay.
of them. Everyone
Okay.
in the book.
Okay.
Step 8, visualize it in your head. So you've got, you know what characters need to be there. You know what you're trying to accomplish. You know that it's going to be a long or short scene. So now picture it in your mind.
Okay.
And once you really visualize it, then you have those details in mind. So step 9 is to write a scribble, quote unquote scribble version. And that's basically just like a quick checklist, jotted notes about this scene. And that's while you have it fresh in your mind.
Okay.
Just write down keywords, like if you have a specific detail that you want included in that scene, write down that specific detail and, make a list of these details and make a list of words that you want to include and, aesthetics that you want to include,
Okay.
or part of the scene that you want to include, part of the, setting that you want to include, bits of dialogue that you want to make sure are added in this
Okay.
scene. Write all those down in a list. And then after you do that, you can write the entire scene with complete detail.
That's true. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And then so that's essentially the 10-step protocol. And then you end up with a fully fledged out scene that you've thought of and you've asked these questions and whether or not it's important to your novel.
Okay.
So
I think what I've come up with is similar, just not in that scientific protocol detail. So I've kind of come up with what the elements of a scene are.
Oh, okay.
So what do you need to have a good scene?
Yeah.
You have to have your time, your place, and your setting, which you said.
Right.
You've got to ground your readers in the where and when of that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Character development, either physical or
Nice.
emotional, that's got to happen in every scene.
That's a really good point.
It's either growth or change. That's what keeps your reader reading your story, not
Yeah.
listening, reading to your story. Well, it might be listening if it's an audiobook,
True.
but they've bonded with your character, and so they want to see the growth and the change that happens.
Yeah.
What happens to your characters as a result of something that's happened in this scene? So that leads to character development as well.
Right.
Okay. Your character's goal.
Yeah.
The protagonist has a long-term goal for the duration of the story, and then smaller goals in these scenes.
Yeah.
So they may or may not reach the scene goal by the scene's end, but viewers and readers who know what's at stake for the character are more apt to cheer for the character's successes and mourn for their failures.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut in here
Yes.
because I have a point that I've written down where basically let your character fail at the end of a scene. Don't let them win because that's gonna end up boring.
It is
I feel
boring.
like
Mhm.
you want to keep your reader turning the page, so don't let your character reach their goal by the end of the scene. Have them fail, and that's more interesting, I think, to read about.
Or if they do reach their goal, have it have unintended consequences.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might reach their goal, but it might not be
As they expected,
what they
or
expected. Yeah. Something needs to be accomplished in every scene.
Yes.
Why are the characters where they are, and what are they trying to do?
Yeah.
And then I came across K.M. Weiland. She's got her own blog, and she said, "What is it? Look at what your character wants. Is it something concrete, like an object or a person? Is it something incorporeal, like admiration or love, respect?
Right.
Are they trying to escape from something? physical, mental, or emotional.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And she said, thinking about what your character wants is a good way to write your scene. You have to know what they want. And then how do they hope to achieve that goal? Are they seeking information? Are they hiding information? Are they confronting somebody? Are they have to fight for it? Is it something they have to fight for? Do they have to destroy something or mend something? That makes me think of Lord of the Rings, where the elf puts back together the king's sword.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what are they trying to achieve? What is the goal?
Yeah.
And then every scene has to have action.
Yeah.
Action that unfolds moment by moment on the page makes up the next layer of a scene. The idea here is to start in the middle of something interesting that's going on, something that makes the reader wonder just what's been happening up until now. That's what you were talking about with where to start.
Yeah.
Where to start the scene.
Yeah.
Plop them right smack in the middle of the action. But you got to consider what they have to know before. You can't have them confused.
Yeah.
You need to explain it to some degree. Conflict. There's got to be conflict.
Yep. I think in every single scene there needs to be
so.
some kind of conflict. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be overt, but it's got to be present. Fill the scene with tension or suspense or something unknown lurking in the shadows.
Yeah.
And that makes an exciting story. Remember that setbacks and failures create suspense. That's what you were talking about.
Yep.
Have them fail.
Yeah.
Throw rocks at them. The characters are there for a purpose, and their goal is so close, and then something gets in the way.
Yep.
Also think about your theme when you're writing a scene.
Yeah.
Thematic advancement.
I saw a few things on that too, and I think it's a good point because you want all of your scenes to be cohesive to your overall story and what you're trying to get across.
Yes.
So
keep your theme in mind. Sometimes a scene might be the perfect place to drop a nugget about that scene.
yeah.
Think about the high moment of each scene. Usually, this is the key moment that encapsulates the point of your scene, the whole point of this scene. And it's usually near the end of the scene.
Okay. Yeah.
End your scene on a hook. That's what keeps the pages turning.
Definitely.
Each scene has to have a clear ending. The goal, conflict, and characters can either change or stall, or some can get resolved, but something else comes up. The possibilities are endless. Depending on what happens, you need to make it so the reader wants to continue reading and see what happens next to the characters.
Yeah.
And then I do have a note that as to point of view, usually each scene only has one point of view.
Yeah.
Scene does not necessarily equal chapter.
Right.
Chapters can have more than
multiple
one
point of view. Right.
But a scene, you're wanting this continuous, unbroken time frame, probably time frame.
Yeah.
And you want that point of view to be in that one character.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think it's important to decide what viewpoint you want to have your scene told from, and what will get across your theme and your goal and the conflict and all of those aspects of a scene.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of confusion when you talk about scene. People think that it's a chapter.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily so.
Right.
A chapter does not equal scene. Scene does not equal chapter, although it can, like you said.
Right. Yeah, and when I was editing my book before, I noticed that I have a lot of scene breaks in chapters, but all of the goals of each of those scenes are similar, and so they belong within the same chapter. So I think that can be, what you were talking about, the confusion between the two. I think that's a good example of
I think so too.
How scenes can fit into a chapter and have more than one. So
that was all I had. What else do you have?
I think I have. Use the five senses, which we talk about.
We did. We talked
pretty
about
often.
That,
yeah. Because I know we talked about it in our fighting and weapons. No, we didn't do weapons in that episode, did we? Just our fighting scenes.
Just fighting scenes, I think.
Episode and the episode that we did, our last episode 11, with editing, talking about using the five senses and making sure you're using all five senses within your scenes, just to give your reader a more
rich environment.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
That's not the right word.
No. But just to pull them into your book. I feel like there's a word for that.
Engagement?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, and then I mentioned it in episode 11 when I was talking about editing, but I really like the 3 E's of writing a scene.
And what were those again?
Those were, make sure it's efficient, entertaining, and essential.
Okay.
So I think I got those out of order. It's essential, efficient, and entertaining.
They're
but
all E's, so
it's all E's. And I really like living by those 3 words because it helps me think about how I'm writing a lot. So
Okay.
That's all I've got.
That's all I've got too. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
Yeah,
that was
thank
just
you.
a little mini for y'all. See you next time.